As a manga and anime YouTuber, I feel like I've committed the biggest sin possible. I have never experienced a single bit of Junji Ito's work.
I'm ashamed to tell you now.
Even though I've owned a few of his pieces for a while now, including Uzumaki, Gyo, and Dissolving Classroom, I just never felt the need to read them, honestly. I think it's because I usually tend to prefer reading longer form stories and series. That way I can dive into a whole world and storyline and all this stuff, right? And for me, it's hard to do that with one and done stories, which Junji Ito tends to make exclusively one and done stories. However, I recently finished Gyo. I've heard people say Gyo or Gyo. I'm just gonna say Gyo. I think that's how most people I've heard say it. So if you don't like the way I say it, I'm sorry. Either way, I have some major thoughts on this book. Before we get into it, if you guys could go ahead and subscribe and like the video, that would be awesome. It means the world to me, helps me get more videos out there to people, so I do appreciate it. So this story follows a couple, Tadashi and Kaori, on vacation in Okinawa. They encounter a strange and deadly fish with these mechanical legs that emerges from the ocean and begins to attack and infect humans. As the fish and its bizarre offspring begin to spread and infect more people, our couple must find a way to survive and uncover the truth behind the creature's origins as well as its motivations, because this thing's a pretty big mystery. Now, while the general plot for this story sounds really good, this being a one and done story doesn't have the time to build things up like an actual series, of course. It moves pretty quick so that way it can get to the points that it wants to get to, which is good because that means the pacing is, constantly moving or constantly moving forward, right? But I think it also hurts the story here. The unique concept that Gyo puts forward has so many different ways and routes that it can go, but it never really goes where I personally wanted it to go or where I thought the story should go. By the end of the story, there is just so much left to explore and go through, and I can't help but feel a little bit meh at the end of the story. I just feel like it kind of ends and then just drifts off. It just didn't create, in my opinion, a satisfying ending. That being said, I appreciated that the story does not drag itself down to build some super romantic relationship up or anything like that, but rather it gives us what we need to know so that way we can move on through the story. It doesn't spend time meandering on things that are just completely irrelevant. This approach makes the story more intense and fast-paced, which is fitting for a horror manga. The artwork in Gyo is also some of the most gruesome and detailed horror I have ever seen. There is a reason Junji Ito is held in such high regard, and as far as the artwork goes, it's just truly insane and just amazingly gross. The way that Junji Ito draws the characters and the creatures both in this manga is haunting. It's just so unsettling. And it's evident that he spared no detail in bringing his vision to life, and I love that. I love that every panel and just scene from this thing just looks like an art piece, Although I would personally never want any of this stuff to hang out in, a piece of my wall or as a wallpaper on my laptop or anything like that, of course. It's still just jaw-dropping to the level of detail that is put in here. The gory and grotesque scenes are just so realistic that it can make even the most seasoned horror fans super uneasy. The artwork not only complements the story, but it elevates it to a whole different level of horror that I hadn't fully experienced to this point. However, like I said, the book felt a bit empty by the end, especially with that ending. And I was also surprised to know that Junji Ito has never followed up with a sequel or continuation, especially because by the end of the story, there's still so much more left to tell. There's so much more left to explore within this new world that we kind of just get dropped in at the end. The story's exploration of themes, like humanity, environmentalism, and the whole unknown and just this weird concept of what is really out there adds so much depth and complexity to the narrative that it's just a shame that the story doesn't continue forward. It doesn't move forward in the way that I personally wanted it to. And one of the most interesting themes explored in Gyo is the environmentalism. The story shows how humans and their irresponsibility towards nature can lead to just insane consequences. The biggest thing here is the mechanical legged fish that's in the story is an obvious metaphor for pollution and destruction caused by humans to other humans, Just in the way that it infects and spreads amongst us is also kind of a warning of what could happen if we didn't take care of our own planet. I think there's so many just insane in-depth metaphors that are dropped every now and then. It's just really eye-opening to see such detail being given without being explicitly said. And of course, the story's environmental message is super timely and thought-provoking, especially I think in a one and done. You just don't you don't think that there's going to be so much stuff going on, metaphorically speaking, of course, but yet here it still finds a way to fit in. It's also just a completely refreshing take on the horror genre. I think a lot of horror tends to be kind of more subdued and maybe just kind of horror for the sake of horror. This horror is more worldwide, and it's kind of given a bigger sense of scale that I really did appreciate. And in addition to that, Gyo also explores human nature and, like I said, the thought of the unknown. Our characters are forced to confront their deepest fears and darkest desires, which is just so creepy and well done. And the way they react to certain situations is a true testament to our characters and kind of where they are at. The unknown element in the story adds so much horror and suspense as our characters and even the reader like myself are so unsure of what's going to happen next and what's going to be the reason for the next thing that happens, right? These themes add so much depth and complexity to the narrative. It's impressive to see how Junji Ito is able to weave all these things into the story so seamlessly while also making it not kind of abrupt and in your face.
This motherfucker don't miss.
No, he's fucking good.
That motherfucker don't miss, man.
He's good.
In the heat of battle, he don't miss.
No.
In the heat of controversy, he don't miss.
No.
Despite the ending feeling, in my opinion, unsatisfying, Gyo is a manga that deserves recognition for its creativity, its ambition, its willingness to push boundaries. The horror elements in the story are so effective, especially, as you can kind of tell, at leaving the reader on the edge of their seats wanting more, wanting to continue the story. Because that's my biggest issue, is that there's no continuation to the story, so it kind of does that in a good way. The way that Junji Ito is able to craft such just insane tension and suspense is so impressive. The story's exploration of its themes, the human nature and environmentalism and all this other stuff, it's just a shame that we don't get to continue to explore more of that. I would love to see Junji Ito do a longer series of work, whether that's a 2-3 part volume series or something like that. I think Uzumaki is actually 2 separate volumes, so he's done larger pieces before, but man, I really want more of this. I want more of Gyo specifically. Overall, I think Gyo is totally worth reading. Even though I don't feel like it fully capitalized on its potential, the manga is a great introduction to Junji Ito's work. It's also a good starting point for anyone that's looking to get into horror manga, because I think this kind of just shoves you into the deep end and just gets you ready for what could come up and what could be there. I think it's a good first book for manga. Also, like I said, it is gross, so be aware of that. If you are not into gross stuff, this might not be the best one for you, but I still think Junji Ito's work is, he's like the Stephen King of manga. Like, he is one of the most prolific horror manga creators, writers, mangakas, whatever, for a reason. This story is intense, it's fast-paced, it's well executed, the artwork is incredible, which is the level of detail and just how gross everything is, while the ending, like I said, left me a little bit unsatisfied. The story and all the boundaries that it pushes just makes it so worthwhile to read. I left it feeling unsatisfied but still having a great ride throughout the entire read. Gyo is a horror manga that is both entertaining and thought-provoking and is sure to leave a lasting impact on readers. I'd highly recommend you guys check it out, read it. It is a one and done, so maybe try finding it digitally. Me personally, I think I'm going to probably sell my physical version, but still is a great book to read, and I think has really pushed me to read more of Junji Ito's work, which I'm definitely going to be doing now. Thank you guys for watching the video. Thank you for staying to the end of the video. I do appreciate it. Go ahead and subscribe and click here to watch something and click over here to watch something else. I appreciate it, and thanks for watching to the end. Have a good one.